Welcome to the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum live panel session number 47 on keeping your employees engaged with security concepts through microlearning. We all know what it's like to endure security awareness training courses that are just too long and too boring. So today, our panel of security experts is going to look at how microlearning can help make the employee experience less painful, and more valuable. So with that, I'm Scott Wright, the CEO and Chief Engagement Officer at ClickArmor. And the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum is an open collaboration group for anyone who's passionate about security awareness and human risk management. And the CSAF series of sessions is brought to you by ClickArmor, the employee cyber confidence builder. If you're looking for an engaging employee experience and a more effective way to train staff, we'd love to talk to you. Just reach out to Ryan Healy-Ogden, who's on our panel today, or myself on LinkedIn, and we'll take care of you. So, welcome to all, and it's great to see all the repeat attendees, and warm welcome to those who have just joined us for the first time. A reminder to the attendees, if you can, just enter into the chat where you're joining us from today. That'll help us understand the international nature of our call today, and also give you some practice at entering stuff in the chat. So love you to engage as much as possible. And now let's meet our awesome group of panelists for the discussion on microlearning. Ryan, would you be able to introduce the panel for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's nice to be back after a bit of a summer break. Scott and I are extremely nervous. We'll be fully transparent. We assume we will mess something up. So bear with us. But no, it's great to have everyone back. It's great to have some familiar faces in the panel. Welcome, Thea. She's a behavioral neuroscientist with over 10 years of experience in studying how the biology of our brains can influence our behavior. In her current role as Director of Research for Practice Security Labs, Thea now works on applying her expertise to cybersecurity scenarios surrounding the human element. Welcome, Thea. Next up, we've got Fleetus. Fleetus Poston is a seasoned IT and security professional, currently a security operations manager. Beyond his expertise, he finds immense joy in sharing his passion for cybersecurity with others. I highly recommend you follow Fleetus on LinkedIn if you don't already. For that reason alone, welcome, Fleetus. And last but not least, we've got Erin. She's been working in the security awareness field for over 5 years. She has helped to build programs for companies ranging from 1,200 to 500,000 employees. Erin has a true passion for maintaining the human connection in all things security and awareness. It's great to have you back, Erin, and good to see you again. And I'm Ryan Healy-Ogden. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity Solutions here at ClickArmor. I'm a passionate speaker and educator who loves helping people understand and implement great security training programs. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Scott, and off we go.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Ryan. So you might be interested to know that each of these sessions is actually recorded. We put it on YouTube, so you can find all of our past recordings there. And every 3 months, we do a condensed version of the insights into what we call the CISO report on security awareness and human risk management. And of course, you can join our Cybersecurity Awareness Forum community, which you can link to here. All right, so let's get into the topic of microlearning for security awareness. And I know that some of our panelists have some contextual thoughts. We like to sort of just share some ideas first of all, but I'll start with just a couple of notes from my point of view, and then I'll open it up to the panel just to see if they have any general thoughts to set the context for our discussion. We'll have some open questions and some poll questions for everybody as well. So just to start out with, we've all been there. We've all had courses that are too long. This new concept of microlearning really is just to break the training up, or else introduce new content into smaller chunks. And there are a number of ways that can be used for different purposes and different methods. So I thought I'd just summarize what I could recall off the top of my head here. And basically, you can use microlearning just to send out communications of policies or bulletins to provide information, basically, and also perhaps use interactive exercises to do those things as well. You could do them by email, or you could do them on another platform. You can do ongoing reinforcement. Basically, after people have taken that foundational training, it's easy for them to start to forget things, especially if there's a lot of heavy content in the training. So you want to be able to have people re-engage occasionally and remind them about what they were taught in that foundational course, and even provide exercises and other kinds of ways to engage them on that. Then we could use microlearning actually for ongoing assessment. From an employee's point of view, we're telling them we're exercising their skills. We might tell them also that this is a way of us sort of taking our mandatory obligations to make sure the organization is secure, and doing our due diligence to make sure that we are assessing people on an ongoing basis. And we can do that through interactive scenarios, quizzes, puzzles as well. And then we could also do it for ad hoc engagement. Sometimes you just want to reach out to people and say, are you still listening? Or do you still remember any of this stuff? Or is there something new that we want to get people to talk about in the organization? So there's a lot of different ways that this stuff can be done. And I'll just go through a few of what I thought of as pros and cons for those sort of four types of microlearning. And under the pros for general communication, when people are seeing course notifications and microlearning and you do a bulletin, basically they'll be recognizing it as coming from a trusted place. It's good for using for things like communicating emerging threats as over time as things change. And it could also be, though, that if your bulletins are not that long or in depth, it might be a little overkill to use more elaborate platforms for just generating those policy notices. But when it comes to things like reinforcing and reminders of best practices, it really does help with knowledge retention when you can share these things with people. Although it can be a little bit tiresome for people if you're doing it too often, and then they may not engage with that training as often. So you have to get that right frequency, I think, for everybody as you're deploying any kind of microlearning. We can do ongoing assessments. Of course, a lot of people do phishing simulations on an ongoing basis, and you may or may not call that microlearning. From our point of view, we're looking at it as content delivery to try and help people understand new ideas and perhaps exercise themselves. So phishing simulations could fall under this ongoing assessment, and it may include extra learning as well for people perhaps who click. But again, doing assessments too frequently can also be tiring. And then lastly, for the ad hoc engagement, it's a good way to engage people. And from a gamification point of view, which, as you know, that's what we focus on at ClickArmor, unexpectedness is one of those psychological drivers that actually helps people remain focused or get engaged. So when you do things that are not on an expected timeline or pattern, that actually can attract more engagement as well. But it could also tend to be higher overhead if you only do that once in a while and you're using a platform that requires you to do that, unless you're doing it in a sort of pre-planned scheduled scenario. So those are my notes around what I think the context of what we're talking about today is, but I'd like to open it up at this point to our panelists. And if any of the panelists want to speak first, you can put up your hand. Otherwise, we're just going to call on you and you can say what you want to mention. So I'm going to start with Fleetus because he often has an opinion.
So I think from a psychology background, like most people can only listen to a topic for about 7 minutes. After 7 minutes, you have to change it up. So from a public speaker's point of view or from a training point of view, you have to change the topic or a joke, or you have to do some kind of banter in between. Because if not, you're going to lose them. So microlearning allows you to time base the activity and then stop it. And then give them something to interact with so to keep their focus. So I think the enablement of that just from the human side, so Thea could probably add more to that, is just important to break it up into chunks. So polls, giving quizzes, giving something interactive like your platform of gamification where they have to stop and interact breaks the monotony or the ability to start wandering and to start daydreaming instead of paying attention.
Very cool. Aaron.
Aside from thinking about breaking up chunks, which is 100% a very, very effective way, is how long are those chunks in the first place? And when I hear microlearning, the first thing I always think of is how effective TikTok and Instagram Reels are. Honestly, I mean, you talk about doom scrolling, and it's because you can change into those chunks and change your topic. And unless your algorithms are weirdly on Judge Judy right now, and all I get is Judge Judy clips, it does change constantly, and you're able to kind of shift your focus on something, but my interest is still kept the whole time. So when I think of microlearning, I really do think of how effective things like TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels are, all the shorts are, and how can I use that in my security awareness program.
Yeah, that's what I was. Sorry, Thea, just to jump in quickly. I can't find how to raise my hand on Zoom right now. This is driving me nuts. Sidebar. But what I wanted to say about the social media thing quickly is I think this generation before has been getting trained for microlearning by consuming and using social media so much that I think we kind of have to adapt as well and realize that if everyone is now used to information in bite-sized chunks and that's how their day-to-day life goes, we kind of have to fit that flow. And I think that's one of the advantages of microlearning is to be able to get into that kind of stream of people's already small chunks that they're consuming along the way. So yeah, I'll hand
I
it
mean,
over to Thea.
not just videos either. I mean, I can think of
Mhm.
having conversations on the one scroll rule. Like you are going to get one scroll on your phone or your computer, and that's all you're going to get out of people. So making sure that you're very aware of how much content can somebody actually consume in a given moment. And it's getting smaller. It's getting micro, if you will.
Keeping micro. Very good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I find very interesting is that you're absolutely right. We're so used to this. We're not used to sitting down and reading a whole newspaper anymore for the news, right? We're getting it little bit. But when we're comparing things to like TikTok and Facebook, you have to understand that when people go and look at those things, they're doing it intentionally. They're highly motivated in that moment to be distracted from whatever they're doing. Right, you're going in there going, please take me away from this moment in my life. Tell me something else. And the problem is when we're providing security awareness training, people can have a very negative motivation towards it because often you're interrupting their day-to-day job or you're interrupting something else that they really would rather be doing than looking at that. But that's also the benefit of microlearning in the sense that the shorter time you can take them away from what they're supposed to be doing, the more effective that teaching is going to be. Or certainly the longer that teaching is, and the more you're taking them away from what they would rather be doing, the more negative they're going to think about that, and the more likely they are to simply dismiss it. So I do think we need to have a certain level of caution when we're comparing security awareness training to sort of socio-cultural things like social media and so on, because we're missing that motivation element in the sense that most people are not trying to distract themselves with security awareness training, but they are with TikTok videos, right? I know, like I
mean, that's what I do.
It.
I mean,
That's
I'm
what
like,
I do
oh
all
man,
day.
yeah,
But like,
I need a reality escape. I'm gonna go sort some phishing emails right now.
yeah.
Aaron, did you have a comment?
Cletus was up first.
Oh, Fleetus, sorry. Yeah.
I want to be polite.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was just going to address Dylan's comment.
Oh, me too.
The 7 minutes is not how long someone can take a digestion. It's before they lose their concentration. So you are conditioning to this. We're all the microwave generation. We want things in less than 30-second bites. Like it's so sad, but it's the reality now that I've dealt with people that if I give them a paragraph, they don't read it. I give them a bulleted list, they will. So just learning your audience. What I also would like to say too is these shorts can be a cyber moment at the beginning of an all hands meeting, of a staff meeting. It doesn't just have to be stop what you're working on. You can introduce these into meeting spaces you already have by planning a 1-minute intro with these shorts before you kick off a meeting. And then you can, at somewhat point in the meeting, ask them a question about the short, either through a polling tool to get an answer, have them put it back into the chat if it's virtual. You can use these to enable attention grabbing in your meetings to break up the monotony too. So you can pause between topics, throw a micro learning at them in a staff meeting or an all hands meeting, and then go back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Excellent points. Yeah, I love that. In fact, I obviously wasn't thinking of those opportunities. That's why I love the panel. Gives different perspectives from people. So really appreciate that, Fleetus. Next is Aaron.
Yeah.
Fleetus always doing that as well. But I was also going to address Dylan's comment, which is you are balancing. Yes, I agree with Fleetus, and I agree that to a certain extent you are going to be potentially conditioning some bad habits, but it is weighing out the reality of the situation with trying to make content that's interesting, that you can get out to people, that people will actually pay attention to. Whether it's good or bad, I can't say that an hour-long training was ever effective. I'm sure Thea probably has some more thoughts on it, but whether we're saying that this is a bad habit or a good habit, I don't think it was ever a good thing that we had 30, 45 hour minute, like, hour long trainings in the first place.
Mhm.
So I think this is, although maybe not the best for attention span, and like Fleeta said, when you start to lose focus on something, but it is the reality. And I think that we have to take that into consideration when we're building stuff. And hopefully it's more effective. But
Yeah.
I'll let Thea answer it.
And before Thea chimes in, I'm just going to let people know I'm going to launch a poll. We do a few polls throughout the session. And so just if you can take a moment to answer, and on to Thea.
Yes, so I think that asking people to engage in something for more than, I would say, about 25 minutes, unless they're highly motivated
Mhm.
in that information, they're basically going to log off. That's absolutely going to happen. I just really wanted to pick up on what Fleet has said, and that is certainly from a brain functional perspective. If you can deliver information unexpectedly, it will be remembered.
Right.
Right. So this is a great idea, right? In between, I'm in the meeting, it's very important. Oh my gosh, here's a piece of information.
Mhm.
But again, you are limited by the complexity of the information that you're trying to give people. And there are a lot of things around human cyber defense now that need context. You need to give people a level of understanding about, whatever it is, why are we doing this? There's a lot of factors within training that we actually need to give people. We can't just get them to regurgitate information. We need them to
Mhm.
understand it. And that unfortunately does take time and effort, and it is in that delivery. So I think the real value in microlearning is in the reinforcement of information that you've given people.
Yeah.
It's reinforcing that information over necessarily delivering the information for the first time. It's that backup. But sometimes people are going to have to sit and be uncomfortable for a little while, because these are complex problems, they're real threats, and it's unfortunately a little bit reality. But absolutely, if you're giving any kind of information, particularly reading over something that would take somebody 5-6 minutes, you might as well not give it to them, basically.
It had me thinking too, just about the delivery, and the one thing that I like about microlearning, and maybe to your point about surprising people, is you can be a little bit more casual when it comes to microlearning, because it takes less of your time, literally. So you can slide it into flows. You can have it pop up in a meeting. People are talking about utilizing lock screens, or maybe when you sign into your device, that's when you get prompted with a quick video tip for the security tip for the day. These moments make sense, and they're now starting to check your boxes, Thea, that you were recommending, of like, okay, surprise, like meaningful content. Then you have to be a part of it. But my only concern with microlearning, the flip side, is, to your point, there's so much important information we need to convey, and it's not just like the actual item, it's like so much around and adjacent to that item that we need to convey to get the whole concept in security, and sometimes that can't be done quickly. And so then you're trading this moment of engagement versus it sticking long term. And so finding the balance, I think, is probably everyone's goal.
Yep. Aaron?
I'm just gonna say that my dad has predicted this for years, decades, if you will. A quote from my father has always been, if I had more time, I'd say less. And I think microlearning is such a good encapsulation of that. Is, this is a really great opportunity for us to be very concise, intentional, and thoughtful with what we're actually trying to teach people, and kind of getting away the fluff and the extra stuff. And like I think Ryan said, the formality of it all, get to the point. Get to the point. It's fine if it's casual. I mean, that's, where work is going now anyways. We are a little bit less formal, I think, in a lot of corporate settings. But yeah, if I had more time, I would say less. Thank you, Dad.
Yeah, that exactly. Thank you, Aaron's dad. So I actually think that's a really important point, because a lot of us who want to deliver training, and if we decide we're going to do microlearning now, it's a new opportunity for us to speak. And I think you want to encourage people to think about how you can condense that message, right? Keep it as short as possible, because people don't really want to do this to hear you talk. If you're going to get value out of it, it has to be very concise, so that it suits the format of micro learning. While we're talking about this, I don't do this very often during our sessions, but I did want to share an example that we do at ClickArmor, and this is actually one of our free things that you can do online. I'll give you the URL, but it's what we call "Can I Be Fished?" And it's an example of microlearning in an interactive format. So basically, you can send people a link that gets them to go in and check a number of different email samples to say, you know, these are things that I might be facing in the real world. And as a customer, we could configure these to be any emails. But basically, the idea here, I'm just going to quickly go through a few and say that these are all suspicious, but they aren't all going to be. And this is a good way to actually show people how. Oh, now I have to do the marketing part of this stuff on. It's a good way to just show people, okay, how did I do? And where can you give feedback? And so this kind of a thing can be done very quickly. And I just wanted to share that with people to give them an example of when I say interactive, that's what I mean. And I see we've got the poll going. So I'm going to, you know, we had a really nice discussion already on the whole benefit of microlearning. So I'm just going to go back to my slides and I'll go back to this slide so people can find that URL later, but you have seen the poll, and just for the benefit of people who are watching on our video recording, I'll just share the poll question, which is, does your current security awareness training include microlearning? Simple question, yes, no, or I don't know. And I would also say that when people are answering comments in the chat, let's repeat the question or the comment, because we'll say, you know, I'm commenting on Dylan's thing, and the people watching later in video may not know what we're talking about. So if we can just remember to repeat those things. Now, going into our first open question for the panel, we may or may not have already covered some of this stuff, so we don't need to spend too long on it if you don't have any further thoughts. But, you know, what are the benefits of microlearning for employees and cybersecurity managers? We've talked about some of the best ways to do it, or best things we've seen, or what some of the challenges are. But overall, the benefits, I'd love to just sort of hear from the panelists and from anybody in the audience, you know, what you've seen as the benefit from microlearning. Lead us.
So similar to what we talked about, if it's done real time, it gives you a way of pivoting real quickly to meet the audience in which you're speaking to. So not all training materials give that Q&A. We're conditioned to set up a presentation with 10 to 20 slides, and all of a sudden we left 5 minutes for Q&A. Did they learn anything from you? When you condition yourself to use 1 or 2 slides and then pause, ask a question, you can tailor your presentation and abandon your slides, reinforce a slide, reinforce an infographic that I mentioned, because I've seen those be valuable because you can quickly walk through a flow of data without having to read a novel. So I think using that as a manager, I can quickly see what my audience is looking at from the SecOps point of view or security point of view of where the gap is in their knowledge and what do I want to address? What do I want to push? What policies do they need to be aware of? What training materials do I need to produce or make sure that they're reinforced with? What role-based training? That's another way you can find out real quickly if they realize that they are an elevated role, what training they need as well. And you can use micro-learning for elevated role-based training to instantly give them feedback on you would have failed this test or you succeeded, and they don't have to wait on a 45-minute presentation and a quiz at the end, and then they get the feedback. So it's more what I would call agile for people versus waterfall training.
Yeah, excellent creative ways of looking at this. Thanks very much, Cletus. Dia, I think, had her hand raised next.
I just want to follow up on that a little bit. The pause is an excellent idea because just from a neuroscience perspective, a lot of the time we think we've finished reading something or hearing something because we finished reading or hearing it. And it's not true. It actually takes you, there's a lot of underlying processes that you're not conscious of that take a little bit of time to process that information related to previous information you've already had, et cetera, et cetera. So leaving a pause, and microlearning initiates an automatic pause because it's over very, very quickly. And it's just delivering a piece of information or maybe 2 pieces of information at one hand. So you lose the energy consumptive aspect of big learning, where you're sitting there for 40 minutes and you've handed them 3 tons of information, and they've read it all and they've heard it all, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they've processed it all because you're giving them too much at one time. And I think that's really my point. There is a physiological limit to how much information somebody can take in at any given time. And it's not because people are lazy or if they just tried hard enough, they would have been able to understand all of this. It's literally a biological restriction on how much information we can take at one time. And so finding out where that limit is for any individual is very, very difficult. You're never going to be able to do that because it's different for every person, given their current state, given their prior knowledge or expertise and what you're trying to teach them. You're never going to be able to control for that. But what microlearning does in a very clever way is it does control for that because it's handing them the smallest available amount of information at any given time. So the effectiveness of delivery is better, certainly, provided they understand and you've done it effectively and it makes sense. It is just going to be generally much more effective for everybody, regardless of their current status.
All right. Excellent points. Erin?
I'm sure it's been said in a slightly different way too, but going off of what Thea is saying, I mean, information overload is a real thing for me. Like I can only take in so much information. And so I like these bite sizes. I like these pauses. We're trying to redo it with our security awareness training, coming down for like an hour long training to do 3 or 4 minute videos. One of them being our information security policy, because why have you do training if we're not just going to tell you what the policy is in the first place? But I do think one of the best benefits of it is what Thea and Fleetisible said, is that you need a little bit of redundancy in different ways. You need that same message said in different channels a lot of times for people to actually digest and retain the information. And I think microlearning, with the caveat, if you are able to do microlearning like this, you have the ability to do that redundancy in creative ways. I'm not saying redundancy is a bad thing either. But I do want to say that I really do empathize with people if you work in an area or a company where they are very strict on one training a year. You can't do a lot of stuff. So I just want to put in the caveat that everything we're saying here is obviously a very idealistic situation. And there are still lots of ways, like Fleetis and Thea have suggested, but totally understand if this is not something that every single person can do. It's great if you can, but unfortunately, sometimes people are very strict about it.
Sorry, Aaron, that's why I introduced like being able to ad hocly use your meetings, because you can get around that. I can't send out another training. I can't add another portal. I can't send another fish. As you can train your trainer more or less to do your micro learning for you by having your champions in your meetings and your avenues, even if it's at water cooler, and then you find a way to come back and put a KPI or a metric behind it. So that's where informal versus formal goes in. We're not on that topic for this purpose right now, even though we're dancing around it. You got to get away, as I joked about the water hose effect. It's easy to say this is going to be a college class in 5 days. I'm going to teach you the same equivalent of a 15-week college class. I've been through those trainings. I've sat through them. They're not, that's why they give you months afterwards to digest it. Months in the trainings. I'm speaking of SANS. College classes hit you with midterms to make sure that you've at least tried to retain the first half. Tried, keyword. So we have to be careful about how we go about that. And to your point, it depends. The favorite security, it depends on your organization. It depends on your culture. If you're conservative versus outgoing, a lot of the stuff will be versus from academia versus practicality.
All right. So we're going to do another poll. I've already started it for the attendees, but the poll question is, what do you think is the best cadence for microlearning programs? Is it weekly, monthly, quarterly, or do you do a few lessons weekly separated by some time, then doing it again? I call that a hybrid, or random or as needed. So just going to ask people to give their answers on that. And anybody in the panel that might have a comment about the frequency of those sessions. And we can also ask about how best to organize microlearning. So I'm going to start with whoever has their hand up now. It's Erin.
I'm just going to give my favorite answer, which is it depends.
It depends. I knew you were going to say that.
It's my favorite answer to give. It's all relative.
That's okay.
But it's true. I mean, sometimes it's great. People like habits. People like looking forward to something. You have a Slack channel. You want to give your weekly tips. You want to give a little quick video snippet of something. You want to quickly poll and see if people answer. But you very much do need some, like Fleeta is saying, some ad hoc training as needed, you know, when you need it in real time. That's just as effective as something habitual. So my favorite answer, it depends.
All right.
Yeah, I think, and also styling it to, what your organization's culture and, maybe what the, the demographics and everything, that really kind of comes down and depends on it. Like if you're running a young tech startup and everyone's under 30 and they're all, on their phones all the time on TikTok and all those things like that, then you make a micro-learning library that's, similar to that, or you find something that delivers it in the method they're used to. But maybe you're, you're a law firm, so it's videos, short
Yeah.
videos,
There
right?
was
Or it's,
Sorry,
yeah.
Ryan. There was a really great talk at Sands too about hot culture versus cold culture at
Mhm.
different companies, and they had us do a little interactive activity to kind of figure out what works best at like a hot company, which, like you're saying, startup culture, like very
Mhm.
quick, very agile, versus corporate, which I've also worked at an insurance company, which is cold and slow, and you need
Yeah.
some more traditional things. So I don't
No
know.
feather ruffling, right? Is
Yeah,
like the thing,
no
right? Is
feathers.
like
No feathers may be ruffled in this situation. So just as like a side note, if they have that recorded somewhere, that was the really interesting thing just to think about as what
Yeah.
kind of company culture do you have? Is it hot or cold?
And that
Sorry.
all goes back to my initial idea of you have to understand your security culture. You have to understand your corporate culture. You have to understand your people. You have to talk to them and know how they want to, can, and even, are willing to learn.
Yeah.
And if you just come in with that one kind of method or the old method or the boring method, it's just not going to work anymore. And people will, I think people are now, you know, there's been a shift, where it's like people seem a little bit more fluid in their jobs, free to leave and move on to other places. We all heard the terms quiet quitting and all these different things that happen, but there is more resistance to like those extra things, and security awareness training falls into that bucket, unfortunately, where now people have an easier ability to brush it off and not do it. Because but like 10, 15 years ago, when you said something was mandatory at work, like you got it done because your boss was going to come talk to you and then you could get fired. But that doesn't really happen anymore. So we have to adjust the ways that people are even working and consuming and everything else. So I think that's your depends answer is perfect. Thea?
So I'm just going to follow up on what Erin said of it depends. Absolutely, it depends. And a lot of research and science has gone into, well, what does this industry look like compared to this industry? Or how is culture impacted by all these different variables? And if you look up the list of variables by which training, culture, awareness are effective within an organization, you can literally not control for all of those things. So my advice would be to, and if you can, use your own experience, use the research to try and take a best guess. But at the end of the day, you have to measure the effectiveness of these things within your organization. If you don't measure how effective it is, and you've just got Jan who came up with it, who said, I think it went really well, is that valid? You know what I mean? I don't know. So what's the best way to implement it? I would say, take a best guess based on what you understand about your organization. Again, hot and cold organization, very, very important. Organizational structure, people's jobs, people's IT competency, all of these different things. Take a good shot at it. But at the end of the day, measure it and measure it properly and understand, maybe take a very small sample of people and just see whether they've actually obtained as much knowledge as what you were previously doing. Because I think really at the end of the day, if you're not measuring it, you're just taking a good guess. And it's yeah.
Oh, you're on mute, Scott.
Sorry about that.
All good.
No other comments. Let's go to, I think I'm sharing my whole screen again. I do that sometimes.
While you're doing that, Elizabeth's point here, just to read it back, she's asking about saturation and what metrics managers would want to capture. It could be a lot of different things. It could be response rate. It could be departments that are responsive, the time that they are responsive. Like, say your goal is to have 80% in the first 24 hours or 36 hours. You can measure that. Your goal is just to get 99%. And then you don't have a time box. As long as they do it in a week, they do it in a month. It depends on the maturity. Again, back to Aaron's, it depends on how mature your org is. And to Ryan's point, Do you make it mandatory? Do you make it optional? You make it a nice to have? Your metrics change depending on how you market your micro learning and how you want them to retain and then convey that information. Because if you just want them to retain, it's a little hard to measure. You're wanting them to actually apply it by answering a quiz, filling out a poll, giving feedback. That's your metrics depends again. But those are some things you can use as time-based, percentage-based, department-based.
Absolutely. So just going to start another poll. I think I've already started it for the attendees. The question is, what are the most useful forms of content that you've seen used in microlearning? We've talked a little bit about it, but there is text, there's video, there are quizzes, there are some of the interactive scenarios and things that I showed you earlier. Just like to get people's thoughts on that through the poll and also from the point of view of the panel. So what are the advantages of using different formats of microlearning for different purposes? Yes, Fleetus.
So as always, every generation, every person, every culture, every company is different. So what works for one will not work for the next. And it's same to the departments. I've worked with organizations where you have very conservative, like legal departments, but then you have very outgoing marketing, IT, depending on the demographic of who's working in those businesses. So you can tailor your micro learnings by departments or by the time that they work. So if you have day shift, you're going to give them a different type of training than a night shift employee because their mindsets are slightly different when they're working second shift or third shift than they are if they're a first shift employee. If you have an international population, you got to be careful with what material you produce because it may not translate well, especially if it's text or if it's a graphic. You need to understand the culture of what the graphic will be construed as. Like you don't want to show dominance, you don't want to show certain gendered things, you don't want to show animals maybe not appropriate for that region. So you have to know your audience, know what material is going to work, what time they're digesting. Because I was going to say earlier, some material might be better over coffee, some might be better before lunch, some might be better after lunch, some might be better at the end of the day, depending on what your culture's like. Are they all office-based employees? It may not be as timely, but if they're a field employee who comes back and checks their computer at a certain time, that's going to dive into how receptive they are because they're there to check their email, put their payroll and do their benefits and then get off that computer. Not every company has office-based, computer-based people. So you have to be careful with your materials in that shape and way as well. So your microlearning may be offline. It may be paper-based versus video-based.
All right. Aaron?
Very adjacent to what Fleetus had just said, but it's the reason that the US has ADA. People require different formats of learning. And sometimes people process things differently. So the benefit of having different formats of learning is that one might work better for another. And you might not know that because they might not know that. Like I know that I like to listen to things and I process information really well when I hear it. I know I process information really well when I read it and listen to it at the same time. It really sticks with me, but not every single person may know that about themselves, what their learning style is. So providing the redundancy in information with variations of how you're presenting the information means that you're going to be able to get a much wider audience to be able to hopefully retain the information.
Really good point. Okay. Anybody else have any comments? All right. So what I'm going to do now is go to our poll review and just give me a moment while I get this stuff set up. I'm going to have to end that poll. And then we're going to launch some of these things in a browser so I can show them to you. I think, in summary, we're going to be looking, if you can just think about for a minute, what were some of the actionable insights that you folks have come away with as we wrap up in a minute? I'll be asking that. So I'd love to have people enter into the chat some of the most important things that you've discovered from our session today. So with that, I'm going to reshare my browser and let you guys see. Oh, I don't think I shared the right one there. Hold on. Okay. something wrong. Number 1. There we are. Okay. There. So our results for poll number 1, if you guys could see this, thanks for your patience. So does your current security awareness training include microlearning? Yes, no, or I don't know. So actually 12 or 100% answered, and 12 of the 19 said that they do have microlearning. So that's interesting. And second question was, what do you think is the best cadence for microlearning programs? Interestingly, by far, a lot of people said random or as needed, whereas next would be monthly, followed by quarterly or weekly, and some said hybrid and don't know. That's really interesting. I think we'll chat about that in a minute. And then what are the most useful forms of content you've seen used in microlearning? So I think most common was short videos, 69%, and interactive scenarios, games or puzzles, 56%. So I think that's probably close to what we would have maybe expected, but love to hear anybody's thoughts on any of those results as we wrap up. So Thea?
Yes. So I just wanted to talk about that last one. We're talking
Yeah.
about microlearning and engagement and what's the best way to deliver that.
Yeah.
One of the myths that has unfortunately been preached by a number of cyber psychologists is that engagement is everything. So you always have to get people to engage or be interactive in a training. Now, if you're running a training that's over, for example, 5 minutes, great to get them to engage because you're realigning them into the task that they're doing. It's also really great if you're trying to explain to people a very complex concept. It's a really good idea to get them to engage in it. However, if you're delivering microlearning, you're kind of adding an antithesis to the benefit of microlearning if you're asking people to engage at the same time, because you're extending the time and the effort and the energy that it takes for their brain to absorb this information. So if you're demanding something of them, you have increased threefold the amount of energy the brain is actually using to engage in that microlearning. So the point of microlearning, my answer on this is short text, or you can do a video or a vision, but it's passive. And I am a very big advocate for microlearning to be almost exclusively passive, because the minute that you start asking them to do things and read things and engage in things and think about things, you kind of remove the benefits of microlearning, which is that here's some information, you have it now and you're going to remember it. Yeah.
All right. That's really interesting. Maybe not intuitive, something I didn't think about. So it's something we can learn definitely. And speaking of learning, if you've had a chance to think about what we got the most out of in this session, I try to take notes when people are speaking. It's hard to kind of do all these things at once, but we just took a few notes saying, things that, Fleetist mentioned were things like we'll be using microlearning or should be using it for things like role-based training, and also concentrating on what metrics are valuable to you for your own organization. It's something maybe you want to collaborate with people and think about what are the things you'd like to measure. Thea had some interesting thoughts on, the value is of microlearning is in reinforcement, and certainly the last point about, making it less work for people if you're going to engage them, just teach them something and leave it at that. And also, Aaron mentioned, the need for redundancy and doing training in different methods that and people may not even know their own learning styles. So really, thanks to all the panelists for those insights. I really appreciate it. Just to wrap up with a little bit of sort of a house cleaning or housekeeping, as we call it, just wanted to let you know that these sessions are brought to you by ClickArmor. And as I showed you earlier on, just momentarily, we do have lots of microlearning capabilities, whether it's just delivering those textual and informational pieces of guidance, or if you actually do want to try and assess people in a short 3-minute engagement, these are things that we can do. So if you want to learn more, get a trial or a demo, please reach out to Ryan or myself and we'll do that for you. Also wanted to announce, some of you may have participated when we did a 5-day challenge back in June. We're doing another one coming up. It'll be slightly different. This one's going to be all focused on fishing. So we call it the 5-day fishing challenge. And would love to see anybody from the session here today just sign up basically on our landing page, and we'll get you in it'll start on the 26th of August. Basically, every day for next week, we'll send you a notification for a little 3-minute challenge you can go in and try out. And hopefully you'll get a chance to learn how gamification works, maybe learn some of the tips that we're providing, and just have some fun. So looking forward to getting you all involved in this, our next 5-day challenge that starts next week. And I'm going to turn it over to Ryan just to announce what our available packages are at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Just a little bit of promo work here. So, the forum is sponsored by ClickArmor. ClickArmor, is a security awareness training platform. And I just want to talk about 3 quick start bundles we have available right now. If your organizations are, on the smaller side, we're here to help as well. I hear all the time that price is an issue for a lot of smaller organizations to get access to security awareness training. And that's a shame because it is needed for all. It helps, any size of company. So we've got packages starting at $499. We can get up to 25 people on the platform for a year with that. You get full security awareness training for the year. You get all your automated reporting, etc. And then as your business grows, or for larger businesses, we have other packages. And then we do custom, obviously, quotes and everything for enterprise and above. So just wanted to mention that. And if anyone's interested, you can either scan the QR code there or reach out for a free demo.
Thanks very much, Ryan. So that brings a close to our session today. We're planning to do our next session on September 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be looking at what are the statistics and insights from the 2024 IBM Cost of a Data Breach report as they pertain to security awareness, human risk management, and the things that concern all of us that are here today. So hoping you'll be able to join us. We haven't set up the link for registering yet, but please watch on our LinkedIn. And if you're on our list registered today, you should get a notification when we're about to launch that one. So thanks very much, everybody. I just wanted to remind you all that engaged employees reduce risks. So with that, I'd like to thank the panel, and we'll see you next time.